Welcome to this podcast from Rolling Roads Baptist Church of Greensboro, North Carolina. You're invited to join with us as we are growing towards Christ. The following is a message from a recent Sunday morning worship service.
This is a recording, an audio recording of a gospel tract that I just stumbled upon that is very fitting for our day today. It's called Be Strong by Billy Graham. See what you think. See if you agree with what he writes in this tract. I stand before you, an evangelical Christian committed to the beliefs of the New Testament. It is in the spirit of dialogue and understanding that I relate to you my own experience. When I was 16 years of age, I was living on a small farm south of Charlotte, North Carolina. I was reared in an Orthodox Presbyterian church. I rebelled against the hard work on the farm and the strict religious teachings of the church. But one day, something happened to me that is so fresh in my mind that I can recall every detail of it at this moment. It was as if I had face to face met Jesus Christ, a Jew who was born in Bethlehem and reared in Nazareth. I became convinced that in his death on the cross, he died for my sins. I felt my own need of personal repentance. My central intellectual question about Jesus came from his assertion, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. John 14:6. By faith I accepted him for what he claimed to be, the Son of the living God. That simple decision changed my life, and I am here today because of that commitment years ago. I believe that God can be experienced in daily life, and that we as evangelical believers are known not only by the creeds we repeat, but by the love we live out in our relationships with our fellow men and women of whatever religious persuasion. Agreement on moral principles. Evangelical Christians especially have an affinity with the Jews, because the Bible they love is essentially a Jewish book written under the influence of God's Spirit. One theologian wrote, remove the New Testament books written by the Jews, and only two remain, Luke and Acts. Remove every Jewish concept, every Jewish influence from the New Testament, and only a question here and there from a pagan source is left, scarcely enough for one short paragraph. As for the Old Testament, no Christian can read it consistently without subscribing to the statement of a recent pope, spiritually we are all Semites, unquote. It is to the lasting glory of Judaism and Christianity that they have their roots in the Old and New Testament scriptures, written so largely by Jews. No greater words have been penned than those of the Mosaic Code and the Sermon on the Mount. As never before, the world needs to accept the ethical principle and follow the moral standards outlined in the law of Moses and the sermons of Jesus. Through their application, social injustice and moral evil can be greatly reduced, if not eliminated. Cooperation on essentials. There are theological differences that we may never agree on, but there are certain things that we can work on together for now. First, we can work and pray together for the peace of Jerusalem. The Middle East is the most dangerous and the most thrilling spot in the world. The Bible teaches that history began there and will someday end there when the Messiah returns to create a new social order and a new humanity. The capital of the world, we believe the prophets teach, will then be Jerusalem. Then will the prophecies be fulfilled spoken by Isaiah in the 19th chapter, the 25th verse, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel mine inheritance. Love will improve race relations. Second, Christians and Jews must continue to work together for better race relations among black and white, Jew and Gentile, majority and minorities. Why do racial tensions continue to mount in some areas? It is because hearts have not been changed. There must be a change in attitudes. We must recognize that skin color does not matter to God, who looks upon the heart. Love will make good morals work. That's written in italics. Love will make good morals work. The one weapon no one can resist is a genuine, sincere, unaffected love for people, regardless of race, color, or religion. Third, we can join in honoring and supporting and undergirding our nation. Every American Christian and every American Jew should thrill to the stars and stripes, bless our Constitution, and thank God that here on these shores we have found a land of liberty and opportunity. Teach morality to our children. Fourth, we should hammer out together a common agreement for teaching moral law to our young people in the public schools. Our children need to know there is a moral law. They need to know there are moral guidelines. I am alarmed by the zeal of some to secularize America. I warn you that total secularization will lead to a rising tide of both anti-Semitism and anti-Christianity. I will stand and fight to the last for separation of church and state, but I must confess that if this separation of church and state is to continue, then this push towards secularization must be halted and reversed. Otherwise, democracy and freedom will not survive in this country. Let's be intolerant, in italics, of moral and social evil. Let's face it, in some areas of life we should be intolerant. By that I mean we should be intolerant of evil. Moses refused to tolerate the idolatry into which Israel fell when he was on Mount Sinai receiving the 10 Commandments from God. Nathan the prophet showed his intolerance when he pointed to King David and told him he was the man who was guilty of sin. Israel's ancient prophets were intolerant as they denounced the personal and social sins of both Israel and the pagan nations around them. All of this is a far cry from the contemporary postures in which the quest for toleration has sometimes resulted in meaningless broad-mindedness, ethical relativism, and ambiguous sentimentalism. Certainly, understanding and charity are called for. However, our Judeo-Christian heritage is persistent in its demand for biblical intolerance of moral and social evil. Too often, tolerance has included compromise of conviction, a yielding to expediency on primary matters. in moral issues, permissiveness and self-indulgence have often made us morally soft and devoid of conviction. Need I remind you that science is narrow-minded and intolerant of error in its pursuit of truth? There is little room for unchecked broad-mindedness in the laboratory. Just so, there are some moral, social, and religious convictions that all of us hold in common and separately, which cannot be compromised. Morality calls for peace, freedom, and justice. Fifth, we can work together for world peace, freedom, and justice. Freedom and justice are equally important, and whether or not we like to admit it, freedom is rapidly disappearing in our world. The surest way to win lasting justice and peace is to help create mutual respect and reconciliation. Sixth, Christians and Jews ought to work together for a national, spiritual, and moral awakening. We need a spiritual awakening that will not only dynamically influence the social and political life of this country, but answer the deepest needs of our young people. A spiritual awakening will strengthen national morals. The revivals in ancient Israel and the revivals in the history of the Christian church have contributed much to the well-being of the nations. Time after time, these spiritual awakenings brought about changes in the moral and spiritual climate. Old grudges were wiped out. Wrongs were rectified. Sins were confessed and forgiven. A new concern for one's neighbor ensued, and moral strength was infused into the youth of revived nations. Suppose the word of Jehovah God were to rule on earth. Would not the reverence and fear of God fall upon all the nations of the world? I believe that a nation steeped in the Judeo-Christian scriptures offers more national security than the costliest array of armament. Be strong, strengthen one another. In the ancient synagogues of Israel, upon the completion of the reading of any of the books of Moses, the congregation would exclaim, be strong, and let us strengthen one another. I would say to both Christian and Jew today, be strong, let us strengthen one another. Well, that's a reading of this really neat pamphlet from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, originally published, I think, in 1978. Do any of the themes in this booklet seem to be important today? Do any of the things in here seem to be true and important and worthy of consideration? I'll try to find a way to link this in the description below. But this is Be Strong by Billy Graham, and an old pamphlet that I came upon which seems very, very important for today. God bless you.
Thank you for listening. Rolling Roads Baptist Church is located at 2800 Van Story Street in Greensboro, North Carolina, near Four Seasons Town Center and Smith High School. You're invited to join with us this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. as we are growing towards Christ. Find us on Facebook and at rollingroads.org.